Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, whenever you are. Hello. Thank you for watching my videos. It's Mike. It's September 13th, 2009. Now, it's Sunday, a day of rest. Just like the three banks that closed on Friday are now resting, gently in the arms of their new owners. Now, one of the banks was quite small. Brickwell Community Bank had one branch, and assets of $72 million and deposits of $63 million. The other two were a little bit larger. Venture Bank of Lacey, Washington was deposits of $903 million, fairly large, one of the largest since Guarantee Bank back in August. Yes, and assets of $970 million, which is the biggest since Affinity Bank back in August of this year. Now, yes, the big one, of course, is Corus Bank in Chicago, Illinois. They had deposits of $7 billion and assets of $7 billion. Now, people may look at this and wonder, and actually I had a video passed to me a few days ago saying this nonsense about if I deposit $100 into the bank, then I no longer have the $100 in the bank and then go and give it to Fred, for instance, in a loan. So the bank keeps $10 and gives $90 to Fred. If that was only the case, it's called accounting, folks, accounting. So if you put a deposit into the bank, say of $100, then the bank will issue you a deposit note. Basically, they'll give you a little note saying you've deposited it, and eventually it will appear on your statement. If you do not take the note that says that you have deposited the money, then you are basically, handing over your rights to your money to the bank in the hopes that they will eventually notify you on a statement that you have indeed deposited the money. However, regardless, if you have the deposit piece of paper, this is as good as the money. Really, it is. It's commercial law. So, so anyway, this is that whole, law of the seas, maritime law stuff. Because you have given them something, they have given you something back. They have presented a bill, in essence, and you have retained that bill. You're basically trading a bill for a bill, but regardless, because money is not really money. But anyway, so this whole idea of you have given your $100 to the bank and the bank will then give it to someone else, that is not entirely true. You have given your money to the bank for a bill. The bill signifies that you still have $100. It's sitting in the bank, but regardless. The bank then takes $90 of that and loans it out. So they keep their 10% as a deposit, or rather a capital level. So this whole nonsense about capital levels, and then they'll loan out the $90 to someone else, to Fred, for instance. And Fred will take the money, his money, and possibly buy stuff, or put it into the bank, or spread it around and go buy things. And eventually the money will filter back to a bank, so the $90 will then appear right back in the bank. And then $9 will be held, 10% capital rate, and $81 will then be circulated back into the economy in perhaps the loan to a lady named Sarah, let's say. Now, what does this do? Well, effectively, the money is recycled. For instance, when you originally put it in, let's say this was Bill. Bill puts it in, and he gets a bill. Funny, that was a joke. And he effectively retains control of $100. The bank then gives $90 to Fred. Fred then spends it or whatever, and somehow it gets back to the bank. He could, for instance, just go and deposit it in the bank. So let's say he puts $90 into the bank. He receives a little piece of paper saying he has deposited $90. And now Fred, he has a little piece of paper that says he's got $90 sitting in the bank. So you have two people. One that's got a bit of paper that says he's got $100, and the other one's got a bit of paper that says he's got $90. How is this possible? Accounting. What happens is the loan then becomes an asset. So the deposit is an asset to begin with. Yes, the bank has some money sitting there. That's fantastic. It also has generated a loan. It too is an asset. Look at these numbers. If you have deposits of $903 million and assets of $790 million, that means the loans aren't worth very much, are they now? Especially gets kind of tricky if you have $7 billion in deposits and $7 billion in assets. Something's not quite right. So, how does this all work in the real economy? Well, it doesn't in the case of these banks here. These banks technically became insolvent, and people are buying them. Looking at the press releases, I've linked all this stuff over here. The press release for the banks basically say, we're yada yada yada. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation will be taking a certain amount, blah blah blah, and they've sold off the assets to another company, and blah blah blah, and they're going to retain a certain amount. And each one is slightly different, and the way the deals are structured is slightly different, but effectively the banks have given up control. Now, why did the banks fail? Looking at Corus Bank in particular, to begin with, essentially, I've linked an article here from the Chicago Business. This is a publication in Chicago, funnily enough. Essentially, right in the middle of this, while the quality of Corus's overall deposit base isn't strong, many of its branch locations are in choice neighborhoods. Yeah, and basically saying that Corus Bank, with more than $8 billion in assets and over 70 branches, will immediately add Corus's 11 branches to its network. Yeah, so MB Financial is acquiring Corus. Now, part of this was some of this, the deal for Corus's coup, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so basically saying that some of the loans and mortgages and whatnot given out by Corus were dodgy. Now, Venture Bank, same sort of thing going on. There are accusations that some of the loans are not very good. This is actually very good. I've got an article listed here from the Olympian, which is, I suspect, a smaller newspaper. Partway through, they describe how the FDIC swooped in and basically, told them everybody what was going on. A team of 80 FDIC employees were sent out to all of Venture's branches. Blah, blah, blah. Venture Bank President and CEO Jim Arneson and Venture Financial Chairman Ken Parsons could not be reached for comment, etc., etc. Well, what's really funny is the FDIC employees who showed up to help Friday arrived in stages so as not to overwhelm Venture's employees. Venture Bank staff also would be asked to stay and help with the transition Friday, but they did not have to, she said. And then you can tell it's a local newspaper. About 30 pizzas were delivered to Venture's main offices during the evening. That makes it all right then. Oh my word. I'm linked here also. An interesting website I discovered recently. Basically lists off the number of banks that have failed in 2009 and also in 2008. When they failed, where they have failed, and you can do some rather interesting analysis of where banks are failing and what the size of them are and so forth. Now, quickly, before I run out of time here, over the weekend, a large number of people went to Washington, D.C. Now, the exact number is not known. The government is not publishing an official figure as to the number that appeared. Now, my title is exaggerated. 1 million people did not actually go to Washington, D.C. and protest. However, many tens of thousands did, possibly as many as 100,000. It's difficult to tell. I've linked a couple of articles here. Georgians lead protest at Taxpayer March on Washington. Basically an angry crowd of mostly conservative protesters from across the country marched through Washington on Saturday. I've linked the article over here. This was from an Atlanta paper. Now, a couple of other things in here. Now, I've linked some videos that have turned up. There's another article linked as well. Let me just find it here. Yeah, but there's a couple of videos. There's a raw video from the Associated Press. If you take a look at the overhead shots of the crowds, I'd say it's slightly more than the 2,000 that CNN was reporting. There's a video essay which is basically speaking to some of the people, the protesters at yesterday's Tea Party rally. There's also a video from MSNBC, again showing the size of the crowd, and also how vocal some of them were. And also an interesting article linked here from the Telegraph over in the United Kingdom. Basically, it's being presented outside of the United States as anti-Barack Obama healthcare protesters. So it's got nothing to do with taxation and bailing out the banks and all that nonsense. That was the headline. A little bit further into the article, they did actually explain that a lot of the protesters were about healthcare, but also about many of the other things that the Obama administration is bringing out. Now, one of the other things that got picked up was this whole thing that, and CNN picked this up in particular, was that there was Nazi signs, and signs such as AK-47s, today's pitchforks, basically painting a picture that these are outrageous conservative rebels, when indeed the majority of them are not quite so outrageous at all, just regular people trying to figure out what they can do about the government and the way the US government is spending so much money. Okay, folks, peace, love, understanding, think about things. Don't believe everything you read. And I will speak to you again soon. Bye.